We are recording. Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Before we get started, can our members that are participating virtually hear me okay? Yes, okay, camera's good, audio's good, okay. We'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to East Bay Community Energy. This is our monthly meeting Board of Directors for Wednesday, June 21st, 2023. Can we please have the roll call?
Thank you. Albany.
Here.
Yes.
Berkeley. Dublin.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Here.
Fremont. Hayward. Livermore.
Here.
Hayward is here
Hayward here.
online.
Oh, yes, great.
You know, except but my understanding is I'm not participating because I wasn't able to notice ahead of time. So Adrian, maybe correct me on that.
Yeah, so you're not meeting from a notice location, so.
Point of order.
Yes.
The member can identify herself at this time in the meeting as being here under 2449, and she cannot have posted that, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. We had to have a quorum present in the room, and the board at the end of last year adopted a policy saying that we would go with the traditional Brown Act rules for the reason that because our jurisdiction is so large, it might be difficult to arrange a quorum in one physical location at meetings. I don't believe we have the number of people here necessary, unfortunately, or we can make a one-time exception.
Sorry, I didn't know that policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I understood that. I appreciate that. I'll just listen. I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Newark.
Here.
Oakland. Piedmont.
Here.
San Leandro. Here. Stockton.
Here.
Tracy. Union City. Is that a yes?
Yeah, he's there.
Good, thank you.
Here.
Community Advisory Committee.
Present.
Pleasanton.
Here.
Alameda County.
Present.
You have four.
Thank you. And I just will note, listed on the agenda, we do have the locations of our members that are participating remotely, as well as the information to participate in this meeting via Zoom. Can we please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we proceed, I wanted to make a recommendation to move an item on this agenda to move closed session to the end of the meeting. I wanted to see if there's any objections with moving the order of the agenda. Okay. Any objections from our members online? So we would move closed session to the end of the agenda. Are there any objections or concerns with that? We've already checked with staff and outside counsel that this works. Okay, seeing no objections, we'll move closed session to the end. Also just want to note that we are required to be out of this building by 10 p.m. just to kind of monitor our time here. So we will now proceed with public comment. This is for items not listed on the agenda, but under the purview of East Bay Community Energy. Do we have any speakers that would like to participate remotely or in person?
We have one hand raised and we have 4 written public comment.
Okay, I will acknowledge the written public comments. We will allow the clerk to read them up to 2 minutes, just as if it was a public comment. Why don't we start with the member that's remote, and then we'll read the letters we've received.
Thank you very much. Alita Dupree, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening to Chair. Alita Dupree for the record. My pronouns are she and her. It's good to be back with you. It's been a while. I'm in Emeryville, so I'm fortunate to be experiencing EBCE once again. At least I hope that the place that I am in is on an EBC account and ideally, hopefully renewable. So how do we get more participation in our greener products? You know, at home, I'm running 100% solar. EBC makes it a lot easier to be renewable because all you have to do is check something off on a website, I guess. And I think EBC is very rare in the fact that we do lots of things to help people. All these programs of equity like this, I guess we'll get that lending library for induction equipment and working with charging. And hopefully we can start charging big electric vehicles like buses and trucks. And I ride those little scooters around. So hopefully they're being charged with EBCE, ideally renewable 100. But certainly I'd like to see some more defaults toward renewable 100 and a continued drive by our staff to be able to source renewable energy, to be able to achieve parity with PG&E. Because ultimately, in long run, renewable energy is cheaper. It's that way at my home. We want to bring that here. So I look forward to what you're going to talk about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have our first letter is from Tom Kelly, setting the clock for 2 minutes. The subject is EBCE management missteps that have cost taxpayers millions. Dear members of East Bay Community Energy Board of Directors and Community Advisory Committee, over the past few years, I've consistently advocated for an improvement in the power content of EBCE's default product, Bright Choice. For many of us, clean, carbon-free electricity was a primary reason for pressing for the development of a local community choice program. Evidence of those efforts can be found in EBCE's formation documents, which clearly state that EBCE will do better than PG&E on greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, the enabling legislation signed by the city of Stockton states that by joining EBCE, Stockton will reduce its greenhouse gas emissions from electricity. The joint powers agreement signed by Stockton states that EBCE will provide electricity with lower greenhouse gas intensity than PG&E. Based on EBCE's plan for making Bright Choice carbon-free by 2030, neither of these promises made by Stockton to its constituents, nor by EBCE to its member jurisdictions are true. As an advocate, I try to understand the reasons why my efforts do not always succeed. Am I wrong? Is my reasoning faulty? Is there something that I'm missing? Until recently, the drive by EBCE to maximize its reserves and by doing so improve its credit rating could be the underlying reason for why EBCE kept purchasing carbon-intensive electricity. But today, I'm wondering if the real reason is simply that EBCE management lacks the experience and qualifications to adequately manage what will soon become a billion-dollar corporation. Over the past year or so, we have seen a number of very costly actions by EBCE management that have affected the reputation of the agency and deprived ratepayers of cleaner, cheaper electricity and enhanced local programs. I estimate those financial losses to the ratepayers to be at more than $20 million, and that is time. The full letter is in the agenda packet and posted on the website. The second letter is from Jim Lutz. I'll say 2 minutes. Jim Lutz. The subject is 2023-2024 value proposition. Dear EBCE board, I'm submitting this comment in response to EBCE 2023-2024 proposed value proposition webinar. I attended on June 6th. The rate changes proposed by staff were to increase the Bright Choice discount relative to PG&E rates from 3% to 5%, and to reduce the renewable 100 premium relative to PG&E rates from 0.75% to 0.25%. Since EBCE began, its rates have always been established relative to PG&E's rates for comparable products. While this may have been appropriate for a newly established energy agency, it is no longer necessary. I believe this practice is now leading EBCE to charge its customers more than it should. A more fiscally responsible method for setting rates would be to estimate operating costs, including appropriate market volatility risks and maintaining prudent reserves, and then divide those costs across the total projected energy sales while preserving the current incremental rate differences between the various EBCE products, right choice and renewable 100 and rate classes. EBCE states that as a renewable 100 customer, I'm paying only 0.25% more per kilowatt hour today than I would be paying if I were a PG&E customer. While I believe this to be true, there's no way that I can confirm it by examining my own PG&E bill. To get a rough estimate of the reasonableness of EBCE's electric generation charges, I compared my November 2022 PG&E bill with the November bill of a friend of mine who lives in Alameda. My EBCE generation only charges divided by my kilowatt per hour usage for the month was 13.81 cents per kilowatt hour. The energy charges from the Alameda Municipal Power bill for the same month was 11.72 cents per hour, and that's time. Great. We have two other letters that will be read during the specific agenda items they address from Jessica Pavar. There is a third letter from Tom Kelly. I will, hold on one second, I will reset the clock.
Is that under a specific agenda item?
Oh, yes, actually, we'll read this under thank you, under the agenda item. So we have a letter from Audrey Ichinose. I will set the clock for 2 minutes. Yes. Oh, that would be under item. Actually, no, we are that. There are no hands raised.
A member.
There is no further public comment. Thank you.
I think we have a member from the public. Please come to the podium.
Hi, everyone. Jessica Tovar with Local Clean Energy Alliance, also the coordinator of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. And I just wanted to introduce myself to folks in the room. I have not been in person for quite some time in some of these meetings, with the exception of the exec and last night's meeting. So it's good to see you all in person. Just to highlight, the focus of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance has always been initially to advocate for a community choice program in the East Bay, but one that actually gives back in the form of community benefits and doesn't repeat the same patterns of PG&E of taking our money, raising rates, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of pretty much the heart of our organizing has always been for the advocacy in conjunction with the labor community for the local development business plan, which is a lot of the team and the programs that we want to see more investments in, because we know that the only way that we're really going to survive the ravages of climate change is to build that resiliency here at home. And the only way we're really going to reduce pollution and actually impact our health and the global climate is to do this at home and create jobs in the process and better our community. So with that, I just wanted to uplift that is the heart of our work, and just recognizing that plan is now entering its 5th year. And so that does require it to be updated, evaluated, updated. We have a lot of ideas around that. A lot has happened in the world since that global development business plan was put out. So I'd like to have that conversation as we move forward after the budget today. So clean power to the people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
There's no further public comment.
okay, we will now close public comment and move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to move the consent item?
Motion to approve,
And that's 6 through 14.
6 through 14 inclusive.
Thank you.
Who's the second?
Gonzalez?
I have a question. Can we?
Yes, sorry. If you have a question, please go ahead.
So there is one agenda item, I just say a typo there. The first meeting notes. The first one.
The 17th.
I have to find the page, but the first agenda item there, the meeting notes, the first meeting notes, there's one council member from my city Caudry, sworn in, but the city name was wrong. Just after that correction, everything's fine.
Okay, so just correct the name for the minutes on May
Yeah,
7th.
correct the city name.
On the bottom of the first page of the meeting notes for May 17th, it says Councilmember Kashif Kadri was sworn in as the director for the city of Berkeley.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve everything and amend the minutes to say the city of Dublin.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other modifications? Okay, seeing none on the motion, there's been a motion to move items. It's been made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Albany,
Yes.
Oh, wait, sorry, let me see if there's any public comment on consent items. I apologize. Do we have any public comments on consent items number 6 through 14?
there are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we're ready for roll call vote, please.
Albany,
So yes.
Dublin,
Yes.
Emeryville. Fremont. Hayward. Livermore. Newark,
Aye.
Oakland. Piedmont.
Aye.
San Leandro,
Aye.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Union City,
Yes.
Pleasanton,
Yes.
Alameda County.
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. We'll now move on to our regular agenda item. The first item is number 15, CEO report. Mr. Bassett is,
Yep,
okay, go,
hello.
we're ready, yeah.
Just pulling up, we had a slight update to it. So first, just trying to get the, Adrian, do you have the updated one with the new
You have
staff thing?
the-
Cool, thanks. So,
Oh, I apologize, yes. Because I apologize, we are moving item 4 and 5, so technically this is item number 4. Go ahead, Nick, sorry.
no worries. So we did have an executive committee meeting on June 7th. At that meeting, we discussed the draft budget and we received a presentation on the naming proposal. And there was a discussion of creation of an interim CAC seat to represent the city of Stockton and a 6-month term extension. Both of these items were passed in the consent agenda. We did have a special board retreat for marketing and account services on May 22nd. And our first MRL subcommittee meeting was held on Friday, June 16th, though we did not
It's a
achieve.
little bit difficult to hear you. Can you project your voice or increase the volume?
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Great. We had an MRL committee meeting, which did not achieve a quorum. And so while there was matters covered there, technically speaking, it was not a meeting for formal purposes. We have 2 new interns who are working in our human resources department. Kentaro Kawasaki had his first day this past week. And Kentaro is a student at San Francisco State. And please scroll down, Adrian. And MK Newsom Rouse, also a student at San Francisco State in their organizational psychology program. So welcome to MK and Kentaro. And that's all I have to report.
Are there any questions? Any public comments on the CEO's report?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and this is our chair's report of the CAC. Just wanted to thank our chair and the other members who had a long meeting last night. So 2 meetings back to back. So thank you for your participation, and we look forward to your.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, just so you know, this really can't go until 9:30 with only 2 items on the agenda. So, so the only thing I'm going to cover in this report is a report back that we had. I'd like to say deep gratitude to JP Ross and everyone who's been working on the local development business plan and in particular the community grants. There was a public forum for getting feedback on the duration and the structure for the community grants budget that has been approved. And it had pretty good participation, and the breadth of community that showed up to participate in that was really impressive. It was geographically diverse. It was constituent group diverse. We had past recipients of grants, people who were interested in receiving grants. We had faith groups. We had domestic violence and like hunger and security response teams. We had faith organizations, community organizations. It was really cool. They ran it in a hybrid format. So there was like 8 or something of us here in person and like double that online, somewhere in those numbers. And just to kind of summarize what was happening in that meeting, there was a lot of gratitude for the direction that the board gave around having those longer sustained grants over 3-year periods. But there was also really consistent feedback about the need for those small innovation grants. Like the first year, I think it was 2019, there was like 240 or 250,000 in the budget. So not a large item at all. And it provided $40,000 grants for groups to really run a pilot program on innovation and say, this will work. Look, we'll show you how this will work, or this will work, but not if we do it that way. We need to change here, or this is where we need capacity building or whatever, and make them eligible to apply for those larger grants and have a higher success rate. So that was a pretty universal thing. There was also pretty universal support for recognizing the organizations that are already doing the work in the community, especially with populations where we have lower engagement levels. Those organizations who already have trust and communication and participation will do a better job in having like penetration into communities where we have less regular communication with them. And so really pulling that up and really looking at the localness of everything. I'm sure JP will be doing an update when that comes back, but wanted to give him a shout out. And the rest of the things with time, I'll just cover those during the regular agenda items.
Thank you, Chair Aldred. Does anyone have any questions? Any public comments on the CAC report?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. This is EDC fiscal year 23-24 budget, and this is an action item. Who will be taking us on this item?
I will be presenting.
Wonderful.
All right, Adrian, can you please put up the slides? Thank you. We have presented this budget twice to the executive committee and once to the board. So I'm going to be focusing on changes that have been made more so than kind of running through everything, and specifically speaking to questions that were asked at our last meeting. Next slide, please. So the primary updates we've made for since May we did run the latest forecasts for PG&E's 2024 rates, which created a modest change in our projections with a $3 million increase in our projected net position. No other changes to our value proposition sort of in our base case. We are, though, proposing to use that $3 million increase and allocate $3 million more to our local programs through a 1-year extension of our community grant funding and the provision of technical assistance for community-based organizations seeking to deploy microgrids. Next slide, please. So this is the pro forma sheet, again, largely unchanged. Still projecting a strong result of just over $170 million of net income at the end of the year. Next slide, please. Again, no major changes here. Major highlights I'll just quickly touch on are, we are continuing to propose to increase our carbon-free procurement relative to our baseline. Next slide, please. Here's where we lay that out. Next slide, please. At our current value proposition, this does sort of give an articulation of what the value, the total annual savings would be expected to be for a residential customer for Bright Choice and the annual premium for Renewable 100. Total customer savings are projected to be $38 million over the course of the year. Next slide. So this is a slide meant to show historical rate trends. This is something that we have wanted to share because we have seen rates go up quite a bit over the last couple of years. 22, if you see sort of PG&E's rates, 22 and 23, quite elevated relative to 2019, 2020, 2021, a slight reduction in 2024, but still at elevated levels. And so you sort of see how our rates have changed over time as we've sought to index to PG&E's. So what you see here is while we're increasing our discount, our rate is still going up on a relative basis. At the 5% discount, though, we would see our rate actually go down for our customers in 2024 relative to 2023. And this is inclusive of all of our fees, PCIA. This does not include their transmission and distribution charges. You may be hearing that PG&E rates are going up very significantly. Those changes are mostly in the transmission and distribution rate, though. Next slide, please. So one of the questions that was asked at our last meeting was to give some options around what would happen if we change our value proposition one way or the other. So an incremental change up or down, Bright Choice and Renewable 100 would either increase or decrease our expected net income. And what can we do with those funds? So generally, we think that, not generally, we think Bright Choice and Renewable 100 value propositions are correlated, just under 1%. Just under a 1% change in Bright Choice equates to a 0.25 change to Renewable 100. So that's how we sort of thought about how they would move. If you reduce the Bright Choice discount from 5% to 4% or 3% to 2%, there's a 0.25 penny change in Renewable 100 as well. And we do that to ensure that we are treating all customers equally and not having one class of customers, Bright Choice customers, subsidize Renewable 100 or vice versa. So what you see here is a 1 increment change, which would be if you were to reduce Bright Choice's, the proposed discount from 5% to 4%, that would generate $11.5 million and reduce or increase the price of Renewable 100 from 0.25 penny to a 0.5 penny premium. That would generate $11.5 million of net income or sort of profit, if you will. From a carbon-free perspective, that would allow us to procure just about 2.5% more carbon-free content. And then from a local development perspective, I will say we generally feel that we're largely tapped out in our ability to up our local development expenditures at this time, given kind of all the things that we have on our plate and wanting to make sure that we are very diligent in how those funds are expended. And so to be able to continue to provide that level of oversight, ensure that the dollars are spent properly and we really know where the funds are going, Our view is that at most we could maybe increase our local development budget by an incremental $3 million. Next slide, please. So we are not presenting any change to our proposed surplus allocation. This is the surplus allocation methodology that we have used, that we used the past fiscal year and that we're proposing again this year. It would take the expected, almost $180 million of surplus, and it would run it through the waterfall. First working capital, then reserves, and then a 50-50 split between more renewable energy and a one-time customer bill credit. Next slide, please. One of the questions that we were asked at our last meeting was about historical risks and kind of risk management and what are the major risks facing the agency to achieve these outcomes. And fundamentally our biggest risk continues to be energy market risks. And so what you see here is how historical market prices, one, have risen quite significantly. And we're seeing volatility that had ranged in the 10 to 20%, now ranging more like 50 to 60%. And so, that volatility becomes a huge, a huge driver of whether or not we're going to achieve these goals. And we can manage that through hedging. And we have a robust hedging program. We hedge approximately 60 to 80% financially, and then the rest of our costs are hedged through the PCIA. So the PCIA hedge works by actually creating some market exposure. It's a version of self-insurance where we say we'll take some market exposure, but we know that if the price of energy goes up in this year, that's going to result in a reduction in the PCIA next year, and so it will result in more revenues. And so that works if you have sufficient cash on hand to sort of weather the price spikes in the near term. Next slide, please. So in addition to energy price risks, which are certainly our biggest ones, other major risk factors are uncollectibles and write-offs. We did see significant increase in uncollectibles through COVID. While that number is coming down, still a risk. Opt-out risk, customers can leave. And though we have seen low levels of opt-outs below 5%, I think if our value proposition were to say change drastically, there would be some risk of particularly large commercial industrial customers choosing to opt out. There are macro factors that we face, financial markets and the broader economy. We saw some of those factors at play with the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and the impact that it had on banking. And then there's wildfire risk. While we don't have any direct wildfire exposure because we don't own any infrastructure, the wildfire risk impacts us in a number of ways. It directly impacts our customers through PSPS-driven power outages, and it potentially affects the market. If there's a major transmission line that would be taken out by a wildfire, it could have very significant effects on energy market. Next slide, please. So on the local development front, the changes that we're proposing are really two. Overall, though, we are proposing, a very high level, almost $26 million of local development investment. So Adrian, can you go to slide 13? Can you go to slide 16, please? No, 17, I'm sorry. So slide 17, this is one of the first change, which is creating a $2 million, 2-year program to fund technical assistance to community-based organizations that are seeking to deploy microgrids. At this time, we don't really have the internal resources to directly support the inclusion of CBO-sponsored projects in our program. But there are very significant state, federal resources out there. You know, one that was just identified, shared with us recently, is $100 million Strategic Growth Council, which is a state agency, $100 million grant program for community-based organizations to build resilience hubs. So our view is, in the near term, what we would like to do is allocate funds to provide both engineering technical assistance and grant writing technical assistance to community-based organizations to help them go and seek these external funds. And so what we're thinking is up to $15,000 per resilience site that could be used to pay for in-kind engineering and grant writing support. So you can evaluate, can my roof handle solar? If it can, let's run some initial financial analysis to see what that looks like, and then help navigate, the application process for a program like what the Strategic Growth Council is offering, to help catalyze a lot more of these projects and help them capture these grant and funding opportunities. Next slide, please. Oh, one more, Adrian. Great. And then the second change is we are adding another $1.4 million to our community grant budget. And what this would do is create a fourth year of funding. So currently the program is funded for 3 years, and we have 3 rounds of grants kind of expected: August 23, January 24, January 25. This funding would add a 4th round in January 26. Those are the main. Those are really the main changes that I wanted to cover. I certainly can go through everything else in more detail, but given that we have gone over this budget a couple times, I wanted to sort of stop there and see whether there was a preference to go to questions and public comment and comments, or for me to actually kind of go through the presentation again.
Okay, is there a preference from board members to ask questions now or continue with the presentation? Does anyone have any questions for Nick up to this point?
I've got some questions. In terms of your first question, I think my preference is that we just kind of focus on these changes and just try to move forward as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Go right ahead if you have
Questions, and then we'll do public comment.
So my questions, again, I think I asked last time about risk management. So thank you for the detailed additions around risk management. In particular, I think one of the questions that I'm trying to benchmark what we do vis-a-vis other community choice aggregators and PG&E or other large utilities. So I'm on slide 10. Say that we hedge approximately 60 to 80% of our energy portfolio. Trying to help me understand how we compare to others in terms of that hedging practice.
I think I really can't tell you how we compare to others, because typically the specific hedges that others would pursue are not going to be sort of publicly shared. There's not like a database that I can go and say, all right, this is what you do, this is what you do. What I would say is our risk management guidelines, which is what drives these, are sort of developed in concert with the Northern California Power Agency and our risk oversight committee. And so I would say that 80% level is pretty typical. The way we look at it though, and so we do tend to have a slightly lower level of financial hedging, but that is paired with our PCIA hedge, which results in an over 100% level of hedging on a sort of on a 1-year timescale basis.
Okay, I am not familiar with the PCIA hedge. I heard the description of it's basically self-insurance. Can you help me better understand what that means?
Yeah, sure. So the way the PCIA works is that our customers have to pay the above market prices for solar, wind, hydropower contracts that the utilities entered into while they still served our customers. So when CCA forms, customers depart, customers have to pay an exit fee. And that exit fee is set based on the differential between the cost, the underlying cost of the resource and the energy market price. So you have lots of fixed price contracts that PG&E entered into on our behalf. When prices are low in the market, that differential is high. So our customers pay high PCIA. That squeezes our margins. When energy prices are high, the PCIA differential is low. Actually, at this point, it's negative, which actually increases our margins. So we have derived a sort of mathematical formula that can demonstrate the correlation between energy market prices and the PCIA over the course of a year. And so when the price goes up, we say, well, we will pay that high price in cash today because we know anywhere from, depending on where you are in the year, from 1 day to 1 year, you're going to have that dollar come back in the form of a reduction in the PCIA and thus higher margins for the CCA.
I could be misunderstanding, but are you saying that higher energy prices are a good thing for EBCE?
Higher energy prices are a good thing for the PCIA.
And to be more precise, a good thing for EBCE margins?
Well, it's also related to what the underlying price of energy is too. So not necessarily, but they can have an effect on margins. Yes.
So we've had lots of discussions about the budget. Ultimately, I'm going to support this action. I'm glad to see the increased transparency about risks. Ultimately, I think just from a financial risk management perspective, we want to know what the potential implications are for the budget. In other words, if energy prices end up high, what risk does that create to meeting our targets? Or if energy prices drop, what risk does that create? So net income should be this much higher or this much lower, or the amount of benefits could be this much higher, this much lower. So that's my.
So I think one thing just to highlight is one of the reasons to rely on the PCIA as a hedging mechanism and not just financially hedge is it provides downside protection. So hedges perform well when prices are high, but if prices go down, your hedges are then out of the money and you end up paying, your energy prices are much higher because you have essentially bought insurance, you bought significant insurance. And so the benefit of self-insurance is if the thing doesn't happen, you end up saving money. And that's sort of the example here. If energy prices go down, not hedging, relying on the PCIA is a more perfect hedge than, or a more correlated hedge than it would otherwise be if you were to hedge in the market and pay a premium.
Okay, so I mean, my request still stands going forward in future budgets. I'd like to see kind of the range of what the implication is based on the modeling assumptions. Right now, we just have what I'm assuming is our best guess and expected value or some sort of measure. But understanding what is the range, what would be good performance, good year for us versus a bad year if we tweak our.
Yeah. We have in the past provided, we call it P50, and this is our P50, and we've provided, say, a P25 and a P75. And that is, 25% probability, 75% probability, high, low. So that's something that we have done in the past, and that has not been, previous boards have just not sought that level of detail.
I think it's good to help manage also the public's expectations on how things could go really well or could go poorly in a given year, depending on market volatility and other factors. So
what we do though is we do provide a mid-year update where we provide sort of a sense of what has actually happened. So that has typically been where we'll cover that.
Okay, so we could address that in mid-year. Okay. Okay, any other questions at this time? Go ahead, Member Bowders.
Thank you. Maybe it's better for Jason, but I'm happy to ask either Nick or Jason. We don't have the actual budget book or budget document in front of us. We have all the information in your presentation. But do we have, in an appendice or anywhere else, do we do a position control sheet where we keep track of all the employees by position number and the assignments when we do the budget, approving the positions that are authorized each year and linking them to the roles they have at the agency? Just by way of background, as the chair of the Air District, we were audited by a management auditor who basically cited us for not having that. And so I don't have the budget book in front of me, and I just wanted to flag that this came up because there were instances where management at that agency moved positions around titles and roles. And that was, the weakness was found that we didn't actually include it in the budget. So I'm just wondering if I don't have it here, and learning lessons from other agencies, was just curious if we have a position control sheet.
I don't think we call it a position control sheet, but we do, Adrian, we do have a list of all the roles that we're seeking to hire in the presentation.
Just to be clear, Director Bowders, just so that I'm understanding, I think that the position list in that document is a requirement for agencies that are members of PERS. But I don't think it's a requirement for EBCE. We're not a PERS member, and therefore we don't have to maintain an ongoing positions and salaries list, which is a requirement for PERS agencies. So we have not done that PERS style list of positions with their salary ranges like you would see for a city or even a special district if they're a member of CalPERS.
So I'm not, no issue with the budget, but just curious if in the future, even if we're not obligated to do it, if that's something we could consider doing. It's just a best practice for I've learned a lot in the last year. It's just a best practice I've learned for keeping tabs on things. We were continuously approving. That's a 460 person agency, obviously very different, but we were approving engineers annually. And then the executive director was essentially in the middle of the year, just unilaterally changing them and giving them different roles. So every year we kept approving engineers. We weren't making any progress. And it was revealed that that was not being budget approved. It was a policy decision. And so I just wanted to, as a matter, just check to see if we have some sort of control over that. So the board is aware of what positions we're funding and how those are carrying over year to year.
Again, we do have a slide in here. We do not have a specific policy, we do not have a specific personnel policy though that relates to, when we list a position, if there's a management decision to reallocate a position from one area to another, there's no specific prohibition on doing that as long as the head count and the budget largely remain the same.
Is that something that could be brought to Budget and Finance Committee? There's going to be any.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so that is the kind of sheet right there. That's the exact kind of thing we're looking for, just tracking it year to year, so that when we approve something like this, we annually know where these go, and changes generally or position changes, if they affect funding in any way, are supposed to be approved or signed off on by the board generally. So that is just something I want to talk about, I think.
Sure, and that's the case. I think when it changes funding, yes, I think we always bring it to the board, and we have that has been our practice. But there have been times when a specific role we have found, we're having a hard time hiring for a specific role, and there's a different need that we prioritized. But no, fair enough. But yes, this is the document that we present, and we track this. So happy to talk about how we can present this on an annual basis for the whole org.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead with that.
Thank you. I'm hoping that this is sort of a softball question, but I was curious to see or to notice that the full-time employee count in 21-22 was 43. And in this budget before us, which I think is a great presentation, it goes up to 83, and that's in a very small window. So I was wondering if you could speak to the growth of the organization and kind of the vision, and do you see this doubling happening, in the next 3 years, or kind of what, at a very high level, kind of what the vision is for the expansion?
Can you put up the slides, the headcount slide, Adrian? Okay.
Oh, page 26. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're a new agency, so there's just a natural ramp that occurs, And, I think we're still in that ramp, though I think we're sort of getting probably towards a flattening. If you look at other CCAs, the 80 to 110 head count is for more mature, similarly sized CCAs, MCE Clean Energy being an example, I believe they have around 100 people. And Clean Power Alliance, which is the large CCA in Southern California, they have around 80 people. So that seems to be about the sweet spot. I think the big drivers of significant incremental headcount beyond this will be taking on new functions that we currently outsource. One example would be if we were to move towards having our own scheduling coordination function. So we outsource that to the Northern California Power Agency. We would have to hire some folks to manage what is essentially a 24-hour desk, as opposed to, and there's automation there, but there would be people you would hire there. The other drivers are, as we think about customer programs, as we start to get more into the world, you might have to have more customer service functions. You might have to have maintenance functions. But I think in our current ramp, our current structure, the current things that we do, I see 90 to 100 really as sort of the top end of where we'll be. But that can change as sort of what we do changes too.
Great. Thank you. That's super helpful perspective. I appreciate that.
I have a quick follow-up question to the new positions that are being proposed. How are you envisioning prioritizing the positions? So for example, under programs, what are your thoughts in terms of the positions listed? Where are the,
Can you go to that slide, please?
So
I think it's 29.
No, well, this is fine. I think some of it is readiness for the team to hire. So we're going to be working with each of the functional leads to sort of understand how they prioritize. I would say some of the positions we're really prioritizing are some of the more administrative roles. So we have a contracts management role that we're looking to hire for immediately, just because we have so much flow of contracting that we need to bring that in. I think, for the rest, we haven't wanted to put the cart before the horse too much. We want to get the positions approved and then, sit down and talk about, kind of what our schedule is going to be.
Okay. Are there any other questions from members in the room or members participating online? Go ahead, Chair Aldridge.
Thank you. This is a follow-up on that, and then you can let me know if you want me to get the CAC during this or after public comment.
Maybe after the comments.
Perfect. So on slide 30, and I really appreciate this discussion. It's been really helpful. On slide 30, there is a personnel demographics breakdown, and there were some questions of averages can be presented in a lot of different ways. So it has an average salary of almost 158,000, which is cool in a lot of ways. But we're hoping to get a kind of a breakdown that looks at it a little bit differently. In the county, we're doing some equity studies. And so we're looking at the difference between the highest and the lowest paid, as opposed to an average, because that can get skewed pretty phenomenally. As well as looking like maybe for the midterm budget, we could look at what the salary differences are for by gender and by race category, because it'd be really great to see how we're doing internally in our staffing from an equity lens. And the other things are probably till after.
Thank you for that suggestions. Do we have any questions from our members participating online?
No.
No questions? And now we'll open up public comment on this item. And I believe we have at least 2 letters to read into the record. Okay.
There is a hand raised for public comment. Recognize Jim Woods for 2 minutes.
My question is, on the program budgets, there was $0 for energy efficiency programs. But I thought that EBCE past year or so applied for and got authority to run efficiency programs with the ratepayer public funds that are administered by CPUC. And I was wondering why that didn't show up, or if that would show up somewhere else.
I speak to that.
Adrian, hold on.
Yeah, do you have any further comments or questions before staff responds?
No, that was the only one.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like me to respond?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. That program is not funded by EBCE. It's funded by the PUC, so it doesn't hit as a budget line item.
Thank you. Do you have more comments?
Alita Dupree, recognized for 2 minutes.
Thanks again to the chair, Alita Dupree, for the record, she and her. Overall, this is a good basic budget. I am very encouraged that we are increasing our value proposition and that the premium for Renewable 100 has been narrowed to 1/4 cent. This will hopefully help to incentivize more individuals and businesses to sign up for the Renewable 100, to be able to participate more in the emissions-free energy, as we're going to see later in a presentation about emissions. So really, that's foundational. And I am saying that we're going to do some other things, other equity-related work in this budget. But I appreciate that in this budget, this legal document that gives you the authority to spend, that there is a sense of relief for all our customers. And the hope is that more people will choose to join with EBCE to give us the economy of scale, so that way we can continue to offer lower energy prices across the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there are no further hands raised at this time. There are 2 letters related to the budget that I would like to read into the record. The first is from Jessica Tovar, dated June 19th, 2023. Call on East Bay Community Energy to resource community-based energy resilience. We, the undersigned community-based organizations, members and supporters of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, call for the Board of Directors of East Bay Community Energy to increase the funding at least 5-fold in the 2023-2024 budget for community resilience. This funding is needed to begin planning and implementing community-based microgrids and community-trusted resilience hubs. While we support the 2022 initiated Resilient Critical Municipal Facilities project and its continued funding in 2023-24, many critical municipal facilities, such as police and fire stations, are not community-based nor community-trusted spaces. As such, those facilities do not make appropriate resilience hubs for low-income, people of color, immigrant, disabled, or senior community members during or in the aftermath of disasters and power shutoffs. Meanwhile, the need for access to community energy services during climate-related or other crises, particularly in communities not long neglected due to systemic injustice, has increased dramatically and can be expected to become more urgent as accelerating climate chaos brings wildfires, smoke, hurricane-force storms, life-threatening heat, and utility power shutoffs. EBCE customers in our communities already suffer from high energy burden due to soaring out-of-reach energy bills. Other energy inequities include poor quality housing with inadequate insulation, electrical panels, wiring, etc. Power shutoffs, planned or unplanned, aggravate the already stretched household budgets and disproportionately high energy burdens with lost food, jobs, and other complications. The letter continues in the agenda packet. Our next letter, to reset the time, is from Jessica Tovar, dated June 19, 2023. Dear EBCE Board of Directors, Community Advisory Committee, and alternates, I am following up on this.
Adrian, is it still budget? I don't know if we could have the same person speak.
This is related to a budget item.
It's the same
But
comment.
it's the same.
It's the same commenter,
Yeah,
yes.
so they can have two.
Okay. So that is, there are no further public comment for this item.
But that letter was posted, correct?
Yes.
It's the one you're about to read.
Yes,
So if any members want to view it online, it should be posted on the website.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make sure we're being fair and balanced here. Do we have any more comments online or public commenters?
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, and
Yeah, can I comment?
I'm going to ask council, since we read the record already that was set by you.
So unfortunately, you get the 2 minutes per commenter. Were you not expecting to have your letter counted your comment?
No, and I think the other issue is there's so many different items within the budget, like different programs, like there's comments.
Do you want to speak on something different?
Yeah,
I'll defer to the chair judgment of the board as to whether or not to allow the speaker. You could limit the time further or give her another 2 minutes at your discretion.
If it's not something that's already addressed in that letter, please speak for at least.
I have two letters. One was an email and another was a letter.
But the one that was just read into the record,
So
so
I can address.
if you want to elaborate, since it's already, you only have 2 minutes, so it's up to you, but it.
Okay, maybe I will skip some of it. Okay, so really quick, the first thing I will say about the Resilience Hub microgrids is it would be nice if EBCE were to apply along with community-based organizations for that strategic growth council money and any other state or federal opportunities. I think I appreciate technical assistance, but I think we can do more to collaborate and build those virtual power plants. The other comments I wanted to make was specifically around the healthy communities and the $5 million that are being asked in the budget. And the reason why is because it wasn't disclosed a lot of information on who the collaborative partners are, no information about the study, where exactly that $5 million is going. My understanding is induction cooktops, but like, I think we need a breakdown of exactly where that money is going. And then the other thing I wanted to add is around community innovation grants, is that program should be replenished annually, and it shouldn't be like a one-off program. I want to remind folks that no grants in that area have been granted since 2019, and there's an urgent need for that money to be dispersed in the community. And to, again, kind of highlight that I appreciate that there's like a commitment of like 3-year funding for about 100,000 per grant. And I do want to support the smaller grants for communities and projects that are not yet fully fleshed out, but might be more explorative, noting that there's a lot of communities that are still grappling with kind of meeting the energy and the social justice things that they address. And just noting that a lot of that came out of that workshop that was hosted by the local development business plan team. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any more comments online? Anyone else?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, so we will close public comment and open up for discussion and deliberation. And I believe staff does have a specific question for us. I'm trying to flag the slide that was on, but the option on slide 8. So I don't know if there are any members that have a preference. Is that correct, Nick? You wanted direction from the board?
Yeah, so, we have slide 8 provides options, right? So the base case is a 5% discount. Now we could reduce that to 4%, and that 4% would carry with it 11.5 million. And I think if we were to reduce it, we would, then have a carryover increase in our carbon-free procurement of 2.5%.
Could you address the pros and cons if we were to go with increasing, reducing our carbon dependency and choosing that on the local development? I think you had made a comment that the potential risk, I want to make sure I was tracking this correctly, with this option is that the value, the cost could go up for the commercial payers, and this could run a risk of people opting out.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's significant opt-out risk. Maybe go to the next slide, Adrian, that we can speak to kind of where customers are. No, I'm sorry, go back one, go back two. It's really sort of the inflationary pressures. So what we're seeing here is our rates are, how they've gone up and down over time. And, a change in what we're seeing with this current budget is that our customers are seeing their rates rise slower than PG&E's rates are rising. So in an environment where prices are high and people are struggling with their bill, even though it's a small nominal dollar amount for a residential customer, it's still, we're trying to commit to, we're going to make sure that our prices don't rise as quickly. Plus we're having the discounts. So that's part of the reason we're increasing our discount. So if we reduce our discount, it's going to see, yes, I think people will still see lower prices relative to PG&E, but they're going to experience sort of overall higher price inflation. Contrast that with more clean energy procurement. That's a good thing. But but that said, we are in an environment where people are worried about how expensive energy is, just how expensive everything is. And so being able to continue to, deliver for our consumers with bill savings, has merit.
Does anyone have? Sure.
Just on that very last point, my sense from prior discussions is that we perceive energy markets right now to be expensive, so to speak, out of market, out of steady state. So would it be better for us to wait to buy that carbon-free, incremental carbon-free energy at a future point in time when markets are more in equilibrium, shall we say? Is it a better deal for our customers in the long run?
I don't think that it's a better or worse deal, because the money is either going back into the customer pocketbook, or it's going to more clean. So the money's out the door anyway. It might be that in the future we can there's more bang for our buck with clean energy procurement as prices go down, but at the current price levels, it's really dollars flow. I think maybe the one consideration is on the discount. It's money we guarantee, that's the money out the door to the customer. On the clean energy procurement, that 2.5% represents a range, kind of the midpoint of what we expect carbon-free energy to cost. So if it's less, we can buy more, but if it's more expensive, we won't actually get the 2.5%. So that 2.5% represents the midpoint of where we're seeing the cost of clean energy trade.
So then, just to kind of use that phrase, bang for the buck, based on your experience, your wisdom, do you think we'll get more bang for the buck if we wait a bit?
I guess I would say two things. One, it's, this change in the value proposition also affects Renewable 100. So it may be that keeping the 5% discount and the 0.25% premium for Renewable 100 actually becomes a catalyst for more people to adopt Renewable 100, as opposed to being 0.5 cents. So that actually could, in a net basis, we actually buy more renewables, because another community says, I see that, and yes, it could go up in the future, but this is enough of this is enough of a trend to make it interesting. And I am cognizant, very much cognizant of the stress that people are having with high prices. And so I do think that there's real value in trying to show our value to the consumers by, when we have the resources, let's give it back to them to let them spend it the way they want to.
I can just comment too on the risk factors, because I know your line of questioning has been focused there. Is we are at historically high energy prices, both for brown power as well as for renewable energy credits specifically. It's very hard to predict what could go in the future. There's a lot of market dynamics that are driving those fundamentals as to why we're seeing extreme volatility and sort of 2x type energy prices relative to historicals. Our risk management policy generally is to cost average over time, build a portfolio, and not try to sort of time the market. It's just a risky proposition. So certainly we try to be advantageous, and we can make little judgment calls like that, but we try not to make decisions on shifting that risk to a different time frame.
Okay, before we proceed, I want to acknowledge the chair of the CAC. I apologize. I know you wanted to give us your report.
Very complimentary to the discussion that's happening here. So two things. Our recommendations are in the CAC annotated version, but I want to expand that a little bit here. We absolutely support keeping staff's recommendation on the value propositions as they propose. The 5% discount for variety choice and reducing the increased cost for those customers who've been opted into the renewable product. Prices are going up. This is really affecting folks, and helping mitigate that as much as possible is important. As it was pointed out, for the average residential customer, it might not be that high. For the average business customer, it can actually be much more significant, and there's a whole discussion around that. But it's important to help mitigate these price increases as much as possible. Our motion was to support staff recommendation on this budget with one modification, and that modification is to change that 50-50 split in the waterfall. So instead of the one-time bill credit of $9.94 per customer, keeping that $14.75 million, which is really significant, for one of three things: either lowering our carbon content, local development, or the resilient centers and virtual power plant efforts, but preserve that $50 on-bill credit for care and medical baseline customers like staff recommended. So, and I want to respond. I really heard Nick during the presentation responding to some of the things that was brought up at the CAC lengthy discussion last night. So I want to thank him for that. What I heard tonight was that our current staffing levels would limit our ability to administer additional local programming. But slide 17 shows that staff do anticipate being able to manage $35 million more to expand current resilience efforts to school districts and other public service agencies, which, when we asked about it last night, would include hiring more staff, right? That's logical. Which we could do for $14.75 million more. And it also, the presentation tonight also said that we don't have the resources to support community-based organizations doing work around building resilience hubs, so that could help solve some of that problem too. And then on the risk front, one of the risks there that we as customers feel across our whole service territory and in our new expanded service territory is that fire risk. And the presentation had 46,000 customers being affected for a full day and 20,000 customers over 4 days. Expanding the resilience hubs and VPPs and things like that, things that we don't own those power lines, but we're affected by them. When that power goes out, it really hits people, especially those medical baseline customers and low income folks who don't have fancy houses with insulation and things like that, right? So really what funds there addresses that risk that they feel in a way that they can see. Like it stands us apart from PG&E in every way. So really just want to put out there that we support staff value proposition. That was one of the direct things, but we do want to see that 14.75 million stick together and address one of those areas, but make sure that it's clear that that includes hiring staff if it's required.
Thank you. And I also wanted to ask Nick, could you please respond to Ms. Tovar's questions? She asked about the 5 million funding and which health partners we plan to connect with and just kind of the rollout of that program.
Yeah, so happy to do so. We have not selected a partner yet. So there is no partner. It is our typically when we roll out programs like this, we will get budget authority and then we'll do internal work selecting partners, and then we would bring that back to the board for a final approval to say, okay, this is what the incentives are going to look like. This is who the partners are. This is how we selected the partners. So there will be more discussion before any funds are expended. Okay. This really just gives us the go ahead to start working on it.
And would that start at a committee level, the executive committee, or would it come to the full board, that discussion?
It would likely go to a committee.
Okay.
And then it would go to the full board for approval. Yeah.
And I know you and I had a discussion too with respect to the building that is an asset that EBCE purchased. Can you speak to future plans with that building and what the update status is?
I think we're internally trying to come up with a set of options, so I would say there are 3 options most clearly. Option 1 would be to sell the building. So we want to understand what, the market looks like. Options, and then option 2 and 3 are some version of lease it out just to tenants and do a partial lease and a partial use for things like our electric bike program. So could we use the space to help warehouse some of the bikes that we're going to be lending out, for instance? So I think we're trying to sort of see what options are available to us. But we haven't, frankly, candidly been focused on that to date.
Okay, thank you. Any more discussion or deliberation before I entertain?
There you go. Madam Chair, Mike Hannon from the city of Newark.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Nick, I wanted to thank you for recognizing the difficulty that you're having weighing the environmental benefits versus the real savings to our customers. And I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of folks have struggled with increased prices in a variety of areas, and certainly energy is one of those. We see in your presentation that the percentage of uncollectibles and the dollar amount of uncollectibles has gone up, and certainly that has to be impacted by the rising rates of energy. So I would encourage us to keep the discount rate at where it is now, kind of keep an eye on where inflation goes over the next year so that we don't impact more of our lower income residents than are already impacted by inflation. Those would be my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And before we proceed, I believe we have one more letter we need to read into the record.
You have one more letter from Audrey Ichinose. I will put 2 minutes.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience.
Thank you. Audrey Ichinose writes, I wish to address the fiscal year 23-24 funding for local development programs. Many thanks to JP Ross and staff for their hard work in furthering clean energy improvements for EBCE customers, especially those living in disadvantaged communities. I wish to draw your attention to a Stanford study featured in this morning's Chronicle. There's a link to that in the letter. The study suggests how EBCE can both streamline the Healthy Communities program and, in my view, make more effective, concrete, and immediately felt use of some of this year's surplus funds earmarked for local development. The Stanford study clearly demonstrates the harmful effects of cooking with gas stoves. It likens cooking with gas to standing over a tailpipe and breathing in a car's exhaust. In particular, its extremely nauseous component, benzene. The report lays out the following. Benzene is a known carcinogen that has been clearly linked to a number of blood cancers, including several forms of leukemia. Gas from cooking inevitably spreads to and lingers for hours in other rooms and other stories of apartments and houses. And a portable induction cooktop costs as little as $50. And I might add, does not require any power panel upgrade. In light of these findings, I hope that JP Ross and staff would consider just giving away portable induction cooktops to any interested household with incomes below an established level. That threshold can be raised to reach more households in subsequent tranches of the giveaway. EBCE's cost might possibly include additional funds to improve customers, to provide customers with a bare minimum of the necessary magnetizable cookware. Support by peer-reviewed studies like this one, EBCE could dispense with time-consuming attempts to track improvements in household health and appliance usage. EBCE could then be able to bolster its already robust efforts to promote the much healthier and efficient method of induction cooking in the community. Thank you again for all of your good efforts. Sincerely, Audrey Ichinose. This letter will be included in the agenda packet after the meeting.
It was received today.
It was just received.
Thank you. And do we know if we've received any other letters?
We have not received any that thing.
Great. Okay, I will now entertain a motion. Member Tillman, go ahead.
I actually wanted to make a brief comment,
Yeah.
and then I wanted to make a motion.
Yeah.
But just the CAC report reminded me to reiterate, we had some discussion at the executive board before about investing more in local programs. Nick, I thank you. You gave a lot of reasoning why we're up against our capacity in staff to manage more local programs, and you are wary of funding more staff positions with surplus, both of which I get. The number one thing someone can say to me to make me think twice about something is staff capacity, as a former low-level government bureaucrat myself. But I think given our discussion here in the CAC and public, it's something to think about in the future. Of if we're at that capacity, we should think about in future budgets or in any amendments to this budget, we should think about hiring more people in the near to moderate term future, because I don't think that interest is going to go away at this level to have more investment there, as we've consistently done that. With that, I would move the resolution with staff's recommendation.
Second. Okay, there's a motion on the table. It's been made by member Tillman, seconded by Gonzalez. Is there any further discussion? Member Held?
Thank you, the chair. Nick, so the CAC suggested foregoing the nearly $10 on-bill credit. Is that just one time, literally just once?
Yeah, one time.
Not like
Yeah, so, well, I mean, this is the practice that we have annually. So we will be, as we close this year out, we're going to be running our sort of the excess revenues through our waterfall and making a credit payment to customers. And so, yeah.
Thank you for the clarification. So in the presentation, if I heard it correctly, you indicated that you could absorb, the agency could absorb increasing local development up to $3 million and still be able to function and get that out the door and do well. Did I hear that correctly?
That's sort of the estimate, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if the 9.94, I'm sorry, I'm really tired, my apologies, everybody. The $9.94, if that was completely gone, that would equal nearly 15 million, is that right? 14.75 million? Okay, so if we were to only shave off 3 million, so we could add to local development, because that really is what we should be doing more of, and if you can do $3 million more, let's do $3 million more. What would that reduce 994 to? What would that?
I don't think I would be comfortable starting to shave off the waterfall in that way. Because it's, it's sort of binary, right? It's a ratio. It's not 3 million here, 3 million there. It might, that 50% could be, it could be 0 and it could be 20 million, depending on how things go. So I think the 3 million was really a reference to, if you were to modify the value proposition, our view is that there are sort of limited opportunities to spend more money on local programs, frankly, given all we have in front of us.
Could we expand the resilience hubs, some of the recommendations with respect to, we talked about schools, clinics, exploring opportunities with faith-based community organizations?
Yeah, I don't think we're just not in a position today to commit to moving beyond sort of our current strategy. So I think the big thing when you go, so schools are in our current roadmap. So we don't need more funding to start bringing in schools, for instance. The biggest issue you start to deal with when you move beyond government agencies, are the real, frankly, kind of the boring side of this, which is site control. All right. We don't have, when you work with a city or a school district, that they have site control over their roof. There's a huge amount of validation when you start to deal with a community-based organization to sort of deal with site control. Do they own the roof? Do they own the building? Okay. What is the state of that roof? Do we need to go in? You need to do engineering analysis to make sure, can it hold solar on it? So, and then what are your criteria for underwriting? When you think about, if we're going to install solar on that roof, what is their ability to pay for the next 20 years? What's the risk that they opt out? What happens if they sell the building? We did have an experience recently where we were evaluating, a meaningful incentive to actually a church in the building electrification space. And right before we were working to finalize the grant, we found out that they had sold the building to somebody else who was not going to operate it as a church anymore. So you start to think about, well, do we need to have deed restrictions so that if we're putting a resilience hub somewhere, it needs to be a resilience hub for the next 20 years. And what happens if in 5 years they decide to sell the building because they have a chance to move to a bigger building or a better building that suits better? What happens to that resilience hub? Somebody else buys it and it's not a community-based organization anymore. So I think we're happy to think about developing some criteria to think about how we can expand this program in the future to include community-based organizations. But, there's going to be a lot of due diligence that's going to be necessary to be able to ensure that, they sort of meet the criteria that that's a local government meets. But at this time, I don't think that we're in a position that we can just go straight to doing it.
Go ahead, Chair. This came up last night too, and there's two of us who in our day jobs manage this kind of thing very specifically. And one of the members, Lisa, who's actually created those parameters for these programs on a state level, and she's offered to provide those materials to staff. It would be absolutely inclusive of the overwhelmingly consistent feedback that we received from all the different CAC members and the public to say, we could approve this budget and staff could come back and say, if the 14.75 were together, this is something that they can do with it. But just to give that kind of direction, like we didn't specify a thing because staff is going to be able to take a look at it and really based off of their staff's projection to be able to handle 35 million more in the VPP resilience hub space. Like that's in their presentation. That seemed like a logical direction, but we really wanted to be able to turn that back to staff and say, what could you do with this together with hiring staff or something over the course of this fiscal budget.
Okay, and alternatively to that, the option is we can also look at this in mid-year, correct? If this is, we don't want to go down this path right now.
Well, so. right,
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a little confused by the statement from staff. I mean, I think I was on the line of thinking that member Cal was on, but I guess if the issue is the way that the money is programmed, what I'm hearing Nick say, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, what I'm hearing you say is that if we approve the budget as staff recommended, there won't be this pot of money because it's already going to be allocated to a credit. So it's not like there will be something mid-cycle to change because it's a credit. It's in the budget as a credit. We have to actually vote to take the credit away, which I wouldn't recommend doing. And alternatively, what I suppose could be done is we could simply, if you didn't want to approve the staff recommendation, we could simply say that we're going to appropriate $14.75 million to an unassigned fund to be determined in the next 120 days or 180 days. And then the committee could focus on what is the right investment, which still could be the credit, which still could be issued at the end of the fiscal year. Or alternatively, if there is a basis to make a additional investment in a resiliency center or one of these other local development options that is feasible to administer with current or additional staff, that could be decided by the board as an item that is a continuation of a budget that has an unassigned fund to it.
Hasn't been programmed yet.
You could just not program it and mark it as unassigned with direction that we would take action on it before mid-cycle review, and that would be part of the mid-cycle adjustment, provided that the practice isn't to issue the credit in the first half of the year. Because once you've issued the credit, then there's nothing to
So
rest.
the credits actually, because we don't know what the sum is going to be, it's not 14.5, it's 50% of that remaining amount. And so the estimate, so the credits don't get calculated until the year is over.
So to that point, then you calculate it, you issue it at the end of our fiscal year after you have all the information.
So if you wanted to change something, my recommendation would be to change is to eliminate the allocation of that 50% to a credit and mark it as unassigned. So you say there's 50%, we can put it towards a credit, but we also reserve the right to put it towards something else.
Okay, is that an amendment?
I'll make a substitute motion. I'll second. Sorry, my friend here, he made a great motion.
I guess.
I'm gonna make a. Did you have a comment?
I do want to just clarify one point around, it's $9 for residential customers. It's quite a bit more for a commercial customer. So you might think for the, I think we did some math, Jason, right? For like the city of Oakland, it's more like $30,000 or $40,000. So you have a lot of accounts. These would be a bill credit of 30 or 40,000. And what does that number sound right, Jason? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I would have to refer to the analysis, but that if
tens of thousands of dollars.
That's approximate, yeah.
It's awesome.
So I think that's important to just recall that these are funds that would go. These are not just $9 to every account. It's $9 for residential, for commercial, small commercial, local governments, large commercial customers. It's sort
Okay,
of
thank you. I think we understand.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a substitute motion to approve the budget with an amendment to eliminate the 50-50 split and hold the funds that would be assigned under that budget line item in an unassigned fund account to be programmed by this board at a time within the next 6 months.
Okay, Elvis seconding and then I'll discuss.
Question. So there is no 50-50 split? I'm unclear what you meant about the 50-50 split.
So changing the portion of the money that, so how about this? The recommendation from the CAC as it pertains to modifying the 50-50 split. As insofar as the funding that would have gone to the credit is instead going to be held in an unassigned fund to be programmed in the first half of this fiscal year. Because it's an undetermined amount. I would normally give you an amount, but it just told me it's not determined.
So
we won't know I guess maybe my request would be to not in the first 6 months, in the first 12 months, because we won't know what that amount is 6 months from now. We'll actually have a much better sense of what it is 9 or 10 months from now.
Yeah, the only issue is you lose the year to actually put the money. If the vote is to put the money into a program, you've lost the whole year to do it. And now you're spending it in the following fiscal year. That creates accounting issues. So I understand, like, you don't know it today, and that's why you guys use this program this way, is that you just know that there will be an amount of money and you're estimating, best guess, a credit at the end of the year to be determined. I get it. So I think there are ways to financially evaluate how to invest this, if that's the choice of the board, in a way that's not a credit without knowing the total amount of money. It could be a simple allocation to resilience centers, and that whatever that dollar amount is calculated at the end of the year goes into that pot of money. So I agree with, I'll amend it to say within 12 months out of fairness to your comment, but we aren't going to know till the end when we need to program it during the budget year.
And we could, through the chair, the organization can certainly make a guess as to, at a minimum, it's going to be at least this much, whatever X is. And if it's more, then you can get more information, but it's not going to be less than a certain amount.
Okay, Member Gonzalez.
yeah, no, I fundamentally disagree. We don't know what that number will be because it's the tail of the waterfall. Right, so we may not have the money to cover the reserve or the excess reserve. And so that number may well be 0. So I don't think it's fair to assume there will at least be 3 or 5 or 12, whatever, because you're at the end of the tail. So
It's the third bucket.
it's at the end, right? It's a waterfall. So I think the more important question is I think we're, from a policy perspective, we're hearing there's greater interest in more, potentially, in more programming, and we don't want to foreclose that decision today. That's what I think the substitute motion says. I just want to be clear as a board that there is no guaranteed amount.
We don't know that.
It might be 0. Sure. Right, we're having a discussion about 0. It might be 50 or 20 or whatever, some bigger number. So as long as we're all understanding, and that goes, I think, to Nick's concern, if I'm understanding it correctly, CEO, that I can't hire a bunch of people to administer a program that I don't know that I'm gonna have money for later.
Okay, so is
Yes,
everyone,
that's fundamentally right. Yeah, thank you.
so do you want to repeat your substitute motion?
To approve the budget as recommended, but to, in accordance with the recommendation of the CAC, change the 50-50 split so that the one-time on-bill credit that was to be assigned in the upcoming fiscal year is held in an unassigned fund to be determined.
Programs, I'm sorry.
An unassigned fund to be determined at a future date by the board.
Okay, is everyone, the secretary okay with that? Okay. No further discussion, I'll take the roll call vote.
Absolutely.
Chair, if we may, before you do that, Member Bald from Pleasanton, could I ask that we make sure we're understanding on the video here? So could staff put up slide 9 of the budget so that we can make sure we understand the motion, the substitute motion on the table?
Yes.
So it's just the last bullet point that will be allocated at a later date determined by the board. There is no figure assigned to it because we don't know.
Okay,
No,
presumably.
no definitive programming that will come back to us to decide if the funding is available, how it would be allocated. So we're not committing to anything. We're just putting a pause on this last component of item number 3. We're not going to move forward with a one-time bill credit. Once that number is available and determined, it'll come back to the board for decision making on how to program it.
Okay, and if I can ask a further follow-up question of staff, please, Chair.
Sure.
Nick, this one-time bill credit to customers, when does that take place? And what was the amount for the prior fiscal year? Or I guess we're quickly approaching.
It hasn't been paid yet. I think our expectation is we're going to pay it in the end of the third quarter, the beginning of the fourth quarter of this year, this calendar year. And Jason, what is the number? I think it's
Yeah, I'm pulling that up
$10.
right now. So the current estimate on that is, sorry. Give me 1 second, please. It looks like approximately 12 million. And this is our best guess at this time.
To clarify, that's 12 million surplus that ripples through the waterfall. That would be the result of this ending fiscal year of June 30th. So we're very near that end. So that's a pretty good estimate. Obviously, the June numbers are far from finalized right now, but pretty good sense.
Wait, Member Bell, did you have any more questions?
I just wanted to follow up to ask staff procedurally, completing the fiscal year before they pay out the bill credit is their standard procedure, correct?
Right. We would typically want to see how the audit closed out, really close the books and finalize that number. Obviously, we take some direction from the board if we wanted to do it based off of an estimate, which would be pretty accurate, but certainly not finalized. And that would impact the timing a little bit. In addition to considerations of what is the optimal time to actually put a bill credit on a customer bill, so they sort of have that visibility and what's their impact to their bill. That's part of the consideration of timing as well.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions.
thank you. Member Anderson?
Just a follow-up question. So has it been EDCE's pattern and practice since the get-go of doing this one-time credit at the end of the year, or is this a new practice?
This is the first time we've had a budget surplus. It's extensive enough to actually have a proposal like this. So this will be the first time we're doing this type of bill.
I see. Thank you.
Okay. No further questions, discussions, deliberations. We'll take the roll call vote.
Substitute motion.
Of the substitute motion, yes. Made by Member Bowder, seconded by Member Cow.
Right, thank you. Albany.
Yes.
Berkeley. Dublin.
Yes.
Emeryville.
Aye.
Fremont.
Yes.
This is on the amendment, right?
Substitute motion.
Substitute.
Yes.
Newark.
No.
Oakland.
Aye.
Piedmont.
Aye.
San Leandro. Stockton.
Yes.
Tracy.
Yes.
Union City.
Yes.
Pleasanton.
Yes.
Alameda County.
Yes. Okay,
13 yes, 1 no. How many? The motion passes.
okay, thank you. I want to thank staff and the board of directors and the CAC and the public for your comments. I think we heard them all, and it's going to take time to roll out a lot of these recommendations and input that was given, but I've noted and look forward to ongoing discussions.
And
Yes,
if I could have the full motion, the substitute motion. Sent to me.
okay, we'll do that. We're now going to move on to the next item on the agenda. This is also an action item, energy prepaid transaction number 3. This is to adopt a resolution to be to enable council and advisors for prepaid transaction.
Adrian, to give the presentation I'll be presenting on this. And this is an action item. I will try to move quickly through this because I know it is getting late and we still have some other items. This is to get enabled with the set of legal counsel and advisors as well as a credit rating agency related to a third energy prepaid transaction. We have done 2 prior transactions, one in 2021, one in 2022. We presented the structure multiple times to the full board in the past and have recently presented to the executive as well. If you can go to the next slide, I have an introductory slide on what a prepaid transaction is. And then there's appendix that sort of goes into the structure in a little bit more detail. So I'll only cover this very quickly and then talk about the parties that we want to get enabled with. And of course, happy to take any additional questions on the structure itself. Energy prepaid transaction is a long-term non-recourse financial transaction. So it is a vehicle in which we can assign energy contracts that we have existing and receive a discount on it because we are a tax exempt entity. That discount is based off of the differential between taxable and the tax exempt debt spreads. It is typically a 30-year transaction. The combined notional values of the energy contracts that go through it are estimated to be in the $500 million to $1 billion range. That's subject to sort of market conditions for what is attractive in the bond markets, as well as our interest in assigning PPA contracts into it. It's been done for decades in the natural gas space. It's been done more recently in the energy and renewable energy space. Next slide, Adrian. So as I noted, we've done 2 transactions in the past. We were the first CCA that transaction in 2021. Our annual savings from these 2 transactions combined are roughly $7 million annually at the outset. That will change over time. While they're 30-year transactions, there's a reset period based off the tenor of the bonds that we do, and that discount rate may change in the future. Expectation is that they'll generally go down, but very highly dependent on where the spreads are in those future reset timeframes. Specifically here, we're seeking approval to get enabled with legal counsel, financial advisor, and credit rating agency. My expectation is, assuming we are approved to get enabled with those set of parties, we'll prepare documents and the July board meeting come forward with an action item to seek approval to move forward on the transaction itself. Adrian, next slide. Really quick summary of the first 2 transactions that we did. The first one in 2021 was jointly executed with Silicon Valley Clean Energy. And those total bond proceeds were roughly $1.5 billion. Our portion of that equates to a 59 megawatt around the clock PPA. That bond tenor was 10 years. The second transaction was done in 2022. This was the third prepaid done by any CCA. And we executed that at a size of just shy of $1 billion, slightly larger size power supply, so 5 megawatts. You can see the difference in the bond tenor over 6 years from the second transaction. Next slide. This is the set of various parties that we utilized for the first 2 transactions. You can see the list is long. These are fairly complex, highly structured transactions. We are continuing to work with the same parties. In this case, there's a lot of efficiencies in the deal cycle, the document preparation, and so there's significant benefits in continuing to work with the same parties. And in this case, what we are seeking is approval on the municipal financial advisor, which is PFM, and they are also the swap, PFM financial advisors and PFM swap advisors, the 2 separate subsidiaries there. And we are also seeking enablement with our legal counsel, so that's Warwick, Harrington, and Sutcliffe, as well as Chapman and Cutler. And then the last piece is the credit rating agency, which is Moody's Investor Services. Those are the parties we're seeking approval for. Other parties will get finalized over the course of next month and largely are enabled through CCCFA, which is the bond issuing conduit. Last slide. So we are seeking approval of a resolution that allows the CEO or COO to sign enabling agreements with these parties. It is Warwick cost of $250,000, Chapman at a cost of $175,000, PFM financial advisors and swap advisors at a cost of $150,000, and investor services. That is an estimated amount at $275,000 that is dependent on the size of the bond that is actually raised. All of the legal counsel and financial advisor fees are contingent. So if the transaction does not move forward, the transaction is closed, we don't incur those costs, and all those fees are paid out of the bond proceeds themselves, so not directly paid from EBC's sort of balance sheet. The Moody's Investor Service is technically not a contingent fee, but would not move forward on getting a rating of the transactions. We're highly confident that we're going to actually move forward, and we'll continue to try to offset and mitigate any of those costs to the extent that the transaction truly couldn't be executed, which includes some cost savings or cost sharing, I should say, with Morgan Stanley, which is the prepaid supplier. So high expectation is that number will be cut and minimized. So yes, those are the 4 different parties we're seeking approval on. I know that was very quick for what is a pretty complex and high dollar value, but we have reviewed this a number of times. So I'll pause there just to see if there are any questions.
Okay, are there any questions?
I have no questions on the hiring of counsel and all that. I think that I completely support that. I have a lot of questions about the transactions. I'd like a private session or a separate group teaching session about that, because these transactions are highly complex. It's about managing that risk. All you have to do is look to the home loan fiasco in 2008 to understand that these are complicated. But as far as this action, I support.
Thank
And
you.
we'll move the item.
Okay, hold on, we get to do public comment. Any further questions? Seeing none, any questions from our members participating online? No, okay, we'll now open public comment.
There are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, we'll close public comment and I'll entertain a motion.
I'll second it.
Gonzalez.
I'll move it.
Okay, it's been seconded.
By
Okay, roll call vote, please.
thank you. Albany,
Yes.
Berkeley, Dublin,
Yes.
Emeryville,
Aye.
Fremont,
Yes.
Livermore,
Aye.
Newark,
Aye.
Oakland. Oakland, Piedmont,
Aye.
San Leandro,
Aye.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Union City,
Yes.
Pleasanton,
Aye.
Alameda County.
Aye.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. We are now going to move on to our new brand name proposal, and this is also an action item.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time tonight. I wanted to start out by thanking members of our ad hoc committee. There were 5 members of the board. That was Chair Marquez, Directors Paul, Pedroia, Patino, and Wright, and then also a committee of our advisory council. And that was Chair Eldred, Vice Chair Fernandez, and Member Lutz. So thank you. They all put in the extra hours to help us as myself. I'm not sure I introduced myself.
Sorry.
I'm Annie Henderson, the Vice President of Marketing and Account Services, and the presentation will be done by our head of brand, Teresa McDermott. But I just wanted to sort of lead into it starting with the thanks, and also noting that this is the 4th time we are doing this presentation publicly. We did it at the Executive Committee, the Marketing Regulatory and Legislative Committee, and the CAC meeting last night. Plus, we reviewed the process at previous board meetings and exec meetings, as well as the special marketing and account services retreat. So hopefully we've laid the groundwork so that we can move fairly quickly tonight. And the reason that we have had to do this ad hoc committee plus the process review is to really balance the need for market sensitivity around things like trademark applications, while also wanting to get the appropriate feedback and engagement with stakeholders. But we will try to go quickly because we have done this a number of times, and I know we still have closed session afterwards. So with that, I'll turn it over to Teresa.
Thanks, everyone. As Annie said, I'm sorry, I'm Teresa McDermott. I'm the head of brand to be with you all this evening. As Annie said, we will go quickly through this. I'm just going to pick out a few highlights, so Adrian will put through it pretty fast and start in a second. In deference to the fact that all of you have heard this message before, at least once. So you can just kind of click forward to the strategic rationale slide. I'm just going to kind of really do the summary here, but of course, thank you. Okay, and I will say I'm happy to go back and drill down on any of the content at all. But as I said, I do believe that most of you have heard this, and I don't want to use any more time than you need to. So just reiterating why we believe now is the right time to do this. And there's two main drivers. And this slide illustrates one of those drivers, and that's kind of our strategic imperative to build on the fact that we're now at a point where we can not only meet the demand for clean energy, or sorry, meet sorry, I'm not doing my pitch, so I've lost my way. I apologize. We're not only filling the need for clean energy, that basic drive for the commodity, we are also at a point now where we can start creating demand for things like efficiency, for programs that you've heard so much about, for the additional commercial facing programs that we want people to engage in. So we're moving from this period where we're not just asking people to take a commodity from us, a transaction that maybe they're not even thinking very hard about, just take cleaner power at a better rate than PG&E. We're now asking them to take consumer type actions. And you don't necessarily expect your utility to ask you to change how you cook or to change the car you drive with or something like that. And so while our brand for selling a commodity was more than adequate, as we want to start acting more in a creating demand for efficiency, for resiliency, for trying new energy efficient products. If we want to act like that and influence those decisions, we want to adopt a brand that is kind of more in line with what consumers are expecting in that space. So that's our strategic imperative. You can go on 2 slides. The other half of the drive for why now is our geographic imperative. As we thought about bringing or worked towards bringing Stockton on, we did a lot of research. We wanted to understand our new constituents in that area better. We did a survey out there to ask them a lot of things about their awareness, their energy priorities, things like that. But we also asked them how they felt about our needs. And we got a very loud and clear signal from folks in that area that East Bay doesn't resonate with them. Mostly folks just said, hey, we're not in the East Bay. Why would a company called East Bay Community Energy be serving me? But some people felt even more strongly than that, that it wasn't just that they don't live in the East Bay, it's that they kind of don't feel comfortable with the idea of the East Bay. They don't share the values of the East Bay, or they think everything in the East Bay is very expensive. So knowing that the folks in the Valley were going to become an even bigger part of our community, our extended community, we felt very strongly that trying to go in there and trying to bring those people and trying to interest them in energy efficiency programs, trying to get them on board with us with a name that makes them feel alienated was not a great move. And so as we were contemplating evolving our brand to help us meet those strategic demands of engaging people in more consumer-oriented activities, we felt that going the extra mile and evolving our name to accommodate our new constituents in the Valley was important too. Okay, you can go forward to into the engagement period. So the forward. Excellent. Those other slides you saw me click through, just to reiterate more what Annie said, we have brought this item and we've been talking about a rebrand or brand evolution for a long time with this group, longer than I've been at EBCE. But now that we're kind of like really getting going, and we're here with you, I wanted to just kind of summarize some of the feedback that we've heard from our ad hoc committee members. As Annie listed them, we want to thank them all. But we, and as Annie said, we did speak with the CAC last night. Generally speaking, both with the CAC and with the MRL and the ExecCom, we had largely positive feedback. We did have some guidance that as we think about adopting the name, we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that it is community energy, that we don't decouple the brand name from community energy. And absolutely, that is our intention, to keep those things, together. And we heard some additional feedback that, there was, perhaps the danger of personifying the name a bit. And we are aware of that. We take that on board and absolutely through our execution would make sure that that is not kind of, an approach that we take. It's not meant to be a personification. It's meant to kind of humanize us and make us a little bit more accessible, but not to be personified in any way. So you can go into the process of naming itself. So just pick out a couple of the slides here you can go forward, please, Adrian. Okay. And then Perfect, thank you. So just the process we took to get to a name, we started by looking at the landscape where we're at, and it's a landscape full of acronyms. And as you kind of saw on the Stockton slide as well, we know just generally we know from our own lives interacting with brands that sometimes acronyms can be alienating. We heard from folks in Stockton that the acronym was alienating if they didn't know what it means. Acronyms are not warm and fuzzy. They're not they don't really inspire people to action unless they're BMW maybe. But we're not going to market like BMW. So we wanted to stay away from an acronym and adopt something that's going to help be a little bit more memorable, warm, and energizing to our customers. So we wanted a guiding principle for us was try to avoid an acronym. You can go to the next slide. But as I said, another guiding principle for us is that community energy is an integral part of who we are, and whatever name we adopted would have to work together with community energy. So those are kind of two of the big guiding principles. You can go forward to the final slide. Okay. Yeah, thanks. And then this is just, as many of you know, because you were involved with this process, it has been an iterative and involved process. We started with a lot of names, over 150. We shared them, we've whittled them down, we've gotten feedback from lots of different folks. We've taken some of the top contestants to trademark review, and unfortunately had some promising names pull out of that, but we are really thrilled with the recommendation we have this evening. And that recommendation, we are buttoned up and ready to move forward with it, should it be approved. It has been cleared for trademark, cleared with legal and cultural and linguistic reviews. There's no danger that, at least in any of the most primarily spoken languages in our service territory, there's no danger that the name is going to imply something unintended. So we feel good about the process we've been through to arrive at this recommendation, and with that, we will go on to the recommendation. Thanks, Adrian. You can go to the next slide. We are proposing that we adopt the name AVA Community Energy. You can go to the next slide. And as we've talked about, AVA is a shortened form of Alameda County and the Valley. So we are providing clean community energy from Alameda County to the Valley. We really like that this provides us with a nice story to tell about who we serve, where we serve, and it's also at the same time short, easy to say. It's easy to say in most of the languages in our territory. It has this humanity to it, and optimism, and easy to read. Memorable, it's warm. We think it works really nicely. We'll go to the next slide. We'd like to thank AVA Community Energy for being climate justice sponsor for the Oakland race. The next speaker is from AVA Community Energy, servicing Alameda County to the Central Valley. See, it flows nicely. Go to the next slide. We are AVA Community Energy. This is how an ad might look. Again, not in kind of final artwork, but just nice, clean evocativeness of serving our community there. AVA is power better living with clean, affordable energy. And you can go to the next slide, another business-oriented ad, and the final slide. AVA Community Energy. We are proposing that to you today. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we'll open up for questions. Any questions? Any Questions from members online? Seeing none, okay, member Andrews?
So thank you. This is the second time I heard this report. Is great. I think it's a really attractive name. The point I was going to raise was raised by some of the public comments and came up in executive committee, which is where when you see the name in the ad with the female individual, it looks like maybe that's her name. So that would be my only caution for us going forward is to try to minimize that linkage between the name Ava and a person potentially named Ava.
Got it.
Yes, any more questions? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
No, it was just.
Any more?
I'm waiting for public comment. I have a comment, not a question.
Yeah. Questions?
Yeah, it's gonna cost what, 2.5 million to rename everything to the press? It's gonna cost money to put names and instead of
It will cost money. We have included that in the budget that was just approved. So if the new name is not approved, there will be a little bit less work, but we still think that we need to reposition our brand to be more sort of evocative and influential with consumer decision making.
Is that factored into what the city's gonna have to do to rename everything that they have?
Yeah, so we have been meeting with a group that we call our Muni Pals. So it is the municipal staff of all of our member jurisdictions. And so we've already begun working with them on sort of a toolkit, a communications plan, so that we can provide to them the materials that they'll need to update websites, include new updates, newsletters. And then we will be doing eventually in that January timeline, a paid advertising campaign as well as direct mailers to all of our customers to support the transition.
So have you met with a little more people?
Yes.
Oh, good. That's the question they asked. Okay, I'll ask them.
Yeah. Yeah, they're part of the Muni Pals group.
Question from member Wright.
Yes, thank you. It's not a question, just a comment. As a member of the ad hoc committee, I can tell you, while it may not have been 100% exhaustive, we went through a lot of names, and there were a lot that we liked and couldn't use. So it gets us to the point where if we're going to expand further into the valley, and I think that would be a good thing for us. We want just want a name that's more inclusive. I think this works well. I think it's something the ad hoc committee could all finally agreed upon. It wasn't like it was we settled on it or anything. That's where we landed. But I think we were all supportive of it. And I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for myself. I'm supportive of this, and I think we've done good work on this. I think it will sell well in all of our communities. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. I do have a question. I know there was a comment made at the executive committee. I think there was a recommendation about capitalizing the A and the B. Can you elaborate on that?
So
let me speak to that, Annie. I would say I don't think we're at a point where we're ready to finalize our style forms yet. I think we want to really kind of, get through this. And then from there, the thought is we're going to come back initially to the ad hoc committee and then to the full board as we start to think about our stylization. But I think we're not there yet where we feel like it's time to do that.
And then I know the comment was made about not losing sight of community energy. So the goal is to retain that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does anyone else have any other questions? No. Okay, we'll open up for public comment.
Okay, there are no hands raised for public comment.
Any members from the public that would like to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick. Sorry. I'm getting tired too. I know. I've shared a lot of the comments that I've heard because I kind of in the meeting threw it out there and try to get people's feedback. People didn't like it. I have to say that. But one of the things that came out of the conversation was the value with the community energy piece. And really not disassociating the AVA name from that, because then it's gonna just be called AVA and it really loses what it is. And most community choice programs have community energy or something similar. So it really, just noting that it really steers differently away from some of the other names that are more geographic. So, you know, in like the advertisement, it said AVA is powering or the sponsor of something. It'd be better if it said AVA Community Energy and just keep using that full name. Because otherwise, if it's just AVA, what is it? And a lot of things came up in that conversation of what it could be, a beauty product, you know, things that are not an energy agency. And then other things that came up was the concerns around, you know, genderizing and having a name that's not like a person's name or a name that, yeah, just is like it's an energy agency and just kind of another comment was just that it just didn't fit and it evoked a lot of tech like Siri, Alexa, hey Ava, you know, give me 100% renewable. Just joking. But anyways, I wanted to just share that because there was a lot of emotion came out of that conversation. And so I'm just putting that out there.
That's appreciated comment. Thank you. Go ahead, Member Chair. Please, public comment. Do we have any more comments?
There are, wait, yes, we do have one more hand raised, Blair Beekman.
Sure.
Recognize you for 2 minutes.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Long time since I've been at a meeting. Hello. I will fill out a public comment card coming up right after this item. I'm very sorry I didn't fill one out sooner, but I heard this conversation and I'm hoping to be learning, you know, community aggregate energy practices and you know, there's different ways to talk about the future of community energy. And I know I'm a little simplistic in how to address community energy issues. But I really hope, you know, what Jessica Tovar just offered to keep the concepts of community in the future naming seems important and towards the goals of, you know, just really a community process to define how they want their energy in their area. And to offer that, I think should be an important concept for people to feel they can simply be invited to the process. And to learn how to do that, good luck how we can do that. So I think community in the title is important. But, you know, for people to feel invited to the process, for anybody of the community, that's kind of my goals and how I'm trying to work and think. And so thanks for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any additional public comment?
There is no further public comment at this time.
Okay, I'll recognize Chair Aldred.
Thank you. So as a member of the ad hoc committee, I want to express deep gratitude. It has been really impressive to see the evolution of this presentation. It is just so clear that you have been listening. The presentation really has evolved pretty substantially over time, and it is awesome to have you on the team, and the responsiveness really builds trust. Like it really builds a lot of trust, and that's going to be important during this transition. And I'm going to second the comments of Member Wright, who said we heard a lot of things. That did happen. It was great. And I think that one of the things that allowed for us is to sit over time with the name. So the CAC did not have that. It was the first time that they heard that. And but one of the, okay, so we made a motion to support, it did not pass. The vote was 4 yes, 4 abstentions. But there were definitely some unified themes. So the strongest thing is that the presentation just said AVA, and it didn't say AVA Community Energy. I mean, going back and looking at the slides, it said very small at the top, Ava Community Energy, but it just didn't say it in there. And there was a lot of feels around the kind of the tech feeling of that, like Alexis and Siri that came up. And around the genderizing piece. And everyone very much said the words community energy need to be attached to it without question, and also deep, deep gratitude. Like there was no negativity expressed towards the hard work, and no lack of respect and understanding the evolution that's happening right now. So to make that clear, there were additional concerns about costs that came up, and I don't know what will happen over time, right? But the initial feedback was not entirely positive. So and then 2 members were enthusiastic yeses, and who had not heard it before. So just really want to give a lot of respect for the inclusion there, and that's what happened.
Member Gonzalez.
So thank you for your excellent work. It's very, very compelling as far as I'm concerned. So I'd like to move the resolution whereby the board approves the use of Ava Community Energy as presented in our packet as a market-facing brand name for our agency. And also that the staff hereby is directed to use Ava Community Energy for all marketing materials related to the agency starting October 23rd, or is determined by the direction of the CEO.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. I know Member Bowders.
So I'm going to begin by thanking you. I don't know you and I'm really new to this board. I'm going to begin because you have a really hard job. I'm partnered with someone who does branding and brand management. I know how hard your job is and how many things go into that. I don't think I'm going to support this, and I'll just go over why I can't support it. I think one point was made about genderization of women's names. I didn't have the tech thing in mind, but I just feel that it's not appropriate for an agency. It's a woman's name. I don't think that's appropriate. Second, if the goal was to not have it be an acronym, there's 2 things about this. One, Ava looks like an acronym. It's 3 letters. It's short. People are going to ask, what does that stand for? I understand and agree with the community about wanting to have community energy, but Ava Community Energy is ACE as an acronym. ACE is a train service that services Alameda County and goes to San Joaquin. So I have a problem with that from a lot of reasons. I think it will create confusion. I think people will ultimately see if we're regularly using Ava Community Energy. I think people will turn it into ACE, because when you look at all that list of all the other community energies, that's what everybody does. They abbreviate it. As soon as it's a community energy, it has a CE on the end of it. And so it will become ACE, and it will be ACE in Alameda County and San Joaquin County, which is a train service that's been here for a very long time. So I'm not able to support it, but that's my reasons.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just have a comment to follow on that comment. So is there, with this shortening and everything becoming an acronym, is it your experience, is it shortened to 3 letters or 2 letters, or sorry, 3 letters or 4 letters? Because the other way to create an acronym with this proposal is AVA CE, so AVACE, right? So
Yeah,
I'm just curious.
I would say at this point, there's different directions. I think, that there may be derivatives that sort of we land on. I think it's premature to sort of focus on what that will be at this point. I think Ava Community Energy is the name, and I think we want to manage, how we refer to ourselves and make sure that it's clear that we are a community energy provider. That direction has come through, but I think it's given the late hour and the fact that we do have one more item that we must get to tonight. I don't think that I would encourage us to go down sort of a path of significant, well, it could be Ava CE or Ava Community Energy or ACE. I think that is something to discuss and explore if indeed we go forward with this. So.
Okay, so I will speak briefly. I will be supporting this. I appreciate all of the hard work that went into this. I know there was a lot of touch points, and as Member Wright said, there were other names that we were excited about, but it just didn't pass muster legally, trademark issues. So we have to move beyond that. And I think for me, the main focus is maintaining community energy. That is going to be key. And I truly feel that this is our opportunity to be more inclusive and opening to the valley. So I'm happy to support the motion and we'll call for the roll call vote.
Great. Can I have the
The maker was.
the motion? Right.
Gonzalez made the motion to adopt the resolution.
Adopt the staff resolution.
The resolution, staff's resolution.
As it is written.
That's right.
As it's written. Okay, great, thank you. Albany,
Yes.
Berkeley. My apologies. Dublin,
Yes.
Emeryville,
No.
Fremont,
No.
Livermore,
Yes.
Newark,
Yes.
Oakland, Piedmont,
Yes.
San Leandro,
Yes.
Stockton,
Yes.
Tracy,
Yes.
Union City. That was a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Pleasanton,
Yes.
Alameda County,
Yes.
motion is approved.
Thank you. So I'm gonna do a time check. It's 8:30. We have an informational item. We still have 2 closed session items. Time sensitive, initial item, wait, the informational item.
Yes, it can.
You can wait?
Yes,
Okay,
it can.
so I think we're gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting, go into closed session. So our members participating remotely, you should have your link for closed session and we will return to report out. Correct? Under-
Chair Marquez, which closed session item are you going to cover first? Because there are 2.
Let's do the one with outside counsel since they've been waiting.
Great. Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. And then, but let me just kind of skip ahead because we may lose members later. So I'm going to go out of order just a bit. Are there any members that would like to place items on future agendas? I'm going to call that item right now, just in case not everyone returns after closed session. Yes.
We had 2 items that we'd like to put on future agendas. One is, it is time for the 5-year review of the local development business plan. And so we'd like to see that start. And then the second is a presentation on the different municipalities working with, like their sustainability departments, working with CAC members. And there is a presentation on that actually. So we just like to see that at an appropriate future time.
Okay.
Whenever that may be.
Okay, I will support that because the local development is something that I flagged earlier, so I appreciate you raising that. Are there any other members that would like to agendize future topics? Okay, seeing none, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting, go into closed session, and then return after those 2 items are heard.
Okay.
So relocate. Kind of this way. Okay, yeah.
What you did? Right.
This one.
Fruitvale, just right down the hall. Yes.
Not this one?
No, not this one, we're at Washington.
Oh, straight.
It's in Fruitvale, which is straight down the hall, and it's on the wall. And Marcus, are you going, I think Raisa needs to coordinate to hand over.
Yeah, my vote doesn't by any means like prejudice my excitement for us.
I'm gonna run to the rest.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, no, well.
Hi, Nick. I had the room muted. I'm not sure if you were trying to say something. Okay, he's not. So this is going to be a fairly lengthy closed session. And I'm not muted.
This will be a lengthy closed session.
Hey, Adrian? Adrian?
Yes.
So I just clicked through the closed session link and it took me here, so I don't think that's appropriate, right?
I will send you the closed session link. My apologies. I'm not sure what happened there.
Okay, can you send it to Dan Wright as well?
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so do you guys want to hear this information?
All I need to do is make our announcement of closed session and.
So which one?
The admissions.
admissions.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we said we weren't gonna hear it and everyone left, so.
Yeah.
to be consistent.
Oh, yeah, that's
We
true.
did say, yeah.
I'm just looking at how long it is. Let's see.
And also members of the community are.
Yes, they are.
It's,
So I think.
yeah. we should not.
Push it out?
Yeah.
Yeah, because we want them to participate.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, got it, okay. I'm sorry.
I love my enthusiasm went up when you were like, I've already said
We want them to participate. We want to hear them.
You're not gonna listen, nobody here's mad at you about that. It means I get to go home and actually eat food.
I know. We're gonna have to sign up for like snacks and goodies at this meeting. It's so long.
We don't need a quorum for report out. For reporting out.
Yeah, let's go ahead and, are we on?
Yes, we are.
Dan's falling asleep.
Open Center's not.
He's nodding his head. Dan is falling asleep. Please, for Dan's sake.
Now we're on.
Okay.
Great.
We're good.
Can everyone hear us?
Hello, yes?
Yes, there's thumbs up over there, Pleasanton.
Okay, we're gonna reconvene this meeting and announce closed session.
We held 2 closed sessions and there was nothing to report out of either closed session.
Thank you very much, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation.
Very cool.
Bye, everybody.
What time?